Welcome back, Earth Anchors. Welcome back,
Wait a minute. I'm going to stop and have you redo that.
Welcome back, Earth Anchors. Welcome back, Solutionaries. Welcome back, our amazing community. I'm here again with you to talk about pertinent topics. Dr. Tatiana Irvin and my wonderful soul sister and colleague, Schellie Whitehouse.
Hi.
Hi. So Schellie is good enough to be here, reaching out to us from across the continent on the other coast. Schellie, tell everybody where you are.
Oh, I'm in beautiful Carlsbad, California, and it's been, yesterday was a high of 70, beautiful sun, ocean breeze. I had to wear a jacket. I'm so sorry, all you East Coasters. Oh, in the middle of the country, I know, it's like 110 today, and that's all right. I'll be home soon, sweating it with everybody else.
No, you drink it up. You drink it up and take a break, because we all know that you put in your time and you do it with love and with care and with patience, and sometimes under grueling temperatures and weather here in North Carolina, taking care of that sacred space and the barn and those beautiful sentient horses. So no, you drink it in lovely and just send some of it our way. Send that cool Pacific Ocean breeze towards the Atlantic. We need it. We need it right now. So just to our community and our audience, Schellie and I always engage in kind of a pre-conversation prior to these recordings, because we always want to make sure what really is current. And I mean precisely current, moment to moment, day to day. And we had a rather engaging pre-convo, didn't we, Schellie?
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, for everybody watching this, like, we don't always totally agree about everything that's happening. Or I was explaining to Tatiana, you know, I kind of feel like I'm a little bit more of the novice, you know, or the person who's grasping some really big concepts and trying to see where I fit in and where's the bigger picture on this evolutionary process. And some of these concepts are really big concepts, and this is Dr. Tatiana's area of expertise. You know, this is her study and what she teaches and practices, which I'm so grateful to be having these huge conversations. So there's going to be times when I might, you know, so sometimes she's so lightning fast, she can get so far ahead of me. I'm got to go, whoa, come back here. We have to deconstruct this concept a little bit further. And I'm thinking of, you know, if I have to deconstruct it for me, then I'm sure there's other people who are jumping into these conversations that might need it deconstructed for them. And there's some of you that might be, you know, way further down the path as well. So everybody is welcome, and all questions are welcome. There's no right or wrong perception at this point. It's, you know, what is your experience of these topics and the conversations that we're having. And today was, you know, it's one that I'm still wondering how it all fits together. So would Tatiana, you want to share what we're discussing today?
Yes. Thank you. First of all, Schellie gives me beautiful props and kudos, and I don't always feel worthy of them. To me, I see things a certain way, and I trust that they are reconfirmed by my guidance, and I trust that they're reconfirmed by external resources, colleagues, and other collaborators, and even by science, and very often mainstream, which is lovely, because that's never guaranteed. But that doesn't mean that bringing a really grounded element to a conversation isn't of vast importance, to make sure that it's, number one, understood and relatable and implementable by those of you that are in our community that are looking to use it. So I'm grateful, because Schellie brings back that grounded synthesis that we're always looking for. But on the heels, and I shouldn't say but, and on the heels of empathy and boundaries, which we only scratched the surface, because that's all we could do. All we could do is scratch the surface of that in last week's recording and teachings. This is a very important and very abutted concept that we could dive so deep into. It would go on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and maybe even into infinity, because of the laws of progression of the soul and the laws of progression of anything that's in materiality. And that is do no harm. Do no harm. What does that mean? It's huge. It's massive. It's something obviously Schellie is very familiar with when she is working with the horses and working with the other higher life forms that are living on that property. They've got vultures out there. They have to consider, are the vultures serving a purpose, you know, on an outbuilding that's out there? And forgive me for going there, Schellie, but I was thinking about how many ways with which the natural laws of progression have just been respected on that property alone. Do you want to touch on that just a little bit before we go deeper into it?
Well, yeah, I can kind of, you know, there's people that they think of vultures and they recoil and they think they're dirty or scary because they eat dead stuff, or that they bring, you know, they're bringing a bad energy because they're flying around and looking for dead things. And
yeah,
right, but I actually think of them as, you know, they're really the world's only true pacifists. I think they're the only creature on the planet that only survives on things that are already dead. They don't kill anything ever. And so their main purpose is there are cleaners. You know, they're cleaning up the dead stuff. They're eating things that may cause disease if it sits and festers, and you know, other creatures are born from it. They eat it all up and it's gone. So I think of them as, I actually really like them, and I kind of think of them as my watch. You know, like they're watching the place, and they keep it clean. So,
boy, that one really opened up a lot for me. Can I play and ride on that wave? Because
please.
You called them pacifists, which was a noble title. I would have considered them nature's cleanup crew, but maybe I've watched too many. I'm from the West. Maybe I've watched too many good old cowboy movies. But my understanding is that one form of dealing with outlaws, or one form of dealing with a conquered foe in the West, was to bury your foe up to their necks in the ground, and the vultures start circling and they start taking you out before you're gone.
I don't. Maybe I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't.
It is
in
Hollywood.
They do here.
It is in Hollywood. It is in Hollywood. Well, so let's assume that there's a squirrel that got hit right on that main road off of the barn. Are they going to come in and clean up that squirrel, or, you know, that possum before it's actually even expired? Does it start before it's gone? I don't know that, but there's been a lot to suggest that. So we're not going to say we're experts, as we talked about in our pre-conversation, about the behavior and the attributes and the diets maybe of all life out there that we may want to, through our empathy and our understanding, still want to set boundaries around how much we want to participate with them or allow them into our space. Because the do no harm suggests that everything has a purpose in this sphere. And I'm going to stop calling it a planet, because it's a planet that's evolving. And as it evolves, there will be different sentience and purposes will change. And that's what we're about. We're about being earth anchors as we move through transition. Recognizing where we are, getting grounded with where we are, and being open to the fact that the natural evolution of the universe has always been growth. It's always been growth. So with that being said, how do we apply do no harm in the yard? And I have a couple of examples, and jump in anytime, Schellie, and we'll do an interplay. But my first experience with do no harm in the spring was to look around and see, and I did a video on this for those of you that are interested. Look at Waking Up Solutionary TV, and you'll see some of the early Earth Anchor videos before Schellie and I started, you know, our fun dialogue. I was out picking weeds. Well, in the permaculture world and in that conscious gardening world, they're called volunteers. They're not called weeds. Weeds is speculative. Weeds is assigning value to something without enough education in most cases to understand the value. Volunteers come with all kinds of essential benefits that we can't go into now, but you may be looking at a volunteer that's come up in your yard, and it as its own sentient self grew in that yard, knowing that its properties were digestive, analgesic, they were iron promoting, they were oxygen fixing to the soil, and it just happened to be in perfect alignment with what your body was lacking coming out of a winter diet and going into a spring diet. And if you bothered to look down at it, plant snap it or, reverse Google image, DuckDuckGo it, you would have found out that that was exactly your perfect medicine. So that was part of my spring, is don't do harm until you understand what you're dealing with, and then make a deterministic choice about what volunteers are going to serve you and your family and maybe your neighbors or the wildlife on your property, and which ones as the time of succession changes, because everything is kind of in that sort of Kali Yuga energy. Things are born and things go through full cycles, and then they come into a destructive cycle, and things need to end, they need to die, and they need to be returned to that place of reuse and becoming fortified, purified, and transcended into something new again, which gets into, right, the carnivorous things. Just as you were saying, you were talking about, of course, the vultures on the property. Well, we could say the same thing with what do you believe when it comes to do no harm with those vultures, or do no harm with the ticks or the fleas or even the mosquitoes that are on your property. So let's get into this dialogue a little bit, Schellie. Where do you want to launch with that?
Well, most of us, well, I'm not going to say most of us, I'm going to say me, as we were talking about the fact, let's go back to a little bit about boundaries, right? As we were talking about boundaries last week, that we have permission to create boundaries that serve us and keep us healthy and whole and in relationship with others around us. So, and that we have the ability, the empathy to sense whether or not whatever we're engaging with or whoever we're engaging with, what the intentions are of the other being.
Right.
And so an insect, a mosquito, who, their intention is lunch and we don't want to be lunch. So we have permission.
And sometimes sharing little bugs and diseases and germs we're not interested in as well.
And that as well, right. Or through flies or ticks or whatever, we're not interested in receiving that gift. We have the right to say no and to create the boundary around us. Now, some people take the do no harm thing literally, meaning I could never kill a mosquito or swat a fly and that's their prerogative, but they also have permission to say, no, you don't get to chew on me or bite me or share your other stuff with me.
Right.
And so as we were talking about that, and I said, well, sure, I'm going to put that out there. And if they decide to cross that boundary anyway, there are consequences, and I will kill you. I'm going to smash you, and that's what's going to happen. So they have a choice too.
That's so sovereignty, right?
Right.
We recognize
yeah.
We have sovereignty, and other levels of sentience have sovereignty. And I'm just going to ask the neophyte that is part of our audience, and literally the scholar of this body of work, and the whole spiritual and spatial reason for our being. Those that have studied here and those that are just new, those that are considering themselves woke and those that are just stirring. And there's no judgment in between. We all were at different phases at different times. Understand that as above, so below is such a genuinely powerful concept, that our microcosm in this fractalized universe, and we talked about the fractalized universe, this one thing gives birth to all these other things, and they experience repetitions and spiraling out of lessons and reoccurrences of thought forms and emotional sets and DNA, just like our children are an outpicturing of our DNA, and you're going to see them go through some of our lessons that maybe we didn't, and then you get the biblical or scriptural term of the sins of the parents or the sins of the fathers upon the heads of the children. What does that mean? That just means whatever we haven't healed in our experience of sentience as we procreate and co-create, it spins out, and others that are in resonance are going to meet that lesson. Well, how's that relevant to do no harm? It's a beautiful idea to think, I will never be tempted or tormented to want to kill something. It's beautiful. It's clean. It is of the light. But as you come into density onto this planet, there are things that are here by nature of this being a duality planet, It may not be a duality universe. It may be a temporary illusion that we're in duality, but light and dark can both have their way, and beings and creations are magnifications of light and dark. And so some things that live and exist with us in our homes, in our bodies, bacteria, viruses, retroviruses, things that live outside, animals, reptiles, insects that are blood-sucking or parasitic, they are a microcosm reminder of a macrocosm reminder. There are beings, there are things that exist in the totality of reality that live as a parasitic energy. And if you don't want to project free reign, no walls, no boundaries, all parasitic immigrants dive on into my energy field, and you can have anything that you want because I'm just here to give and love and give light, you can do that. And it is beautifully savioristic and sacrificial, but there will be consequences that will look like drains of your energy, that might look like disease in your body, that might look like imbalance if you never set a boundary. And isn't that really what we're trying to help express to everyone here with the explanation of the natural world all the way up into humans, Schellie, is that we're not going to tell you where to set the boundary. It's not our right to tell you where to set the boundaries, but it is up to you to decide.
Yes. And what I'm hearing is what has become crystal clear even in our pre-conversation and what you were just sharing there, that illustration there, which was really great, is the first choice around do no harm. And for me, in this moment, this is my aha, the most important choice around do no harm is to first do no harm to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
To choose light and love and care for yourself. And that would mean self-protection from the darker energy. So if you really truly want to be in that lighter vibration, the higher loving vibration, then you have to first choose, you have to protect yourself. You have to protect yourself from the disease and the discord and the lower, but that doesn't mean they don't, well, I don't know. So here's where my mind goes, they still have a right to exist in that vibration. I have the right to choose not to participate in that vibration, is where my mind is going with this.
Can I bounce it up just a notch for a really fun example?
Yes, please.
Some people are no bugs, no bugs, no bugs. I've got neighbors that are like, no snakes. No, there's not a good snake out there. I don't agree. I like the black rat snakes on my property because that means I've got less coppers. And black rat snakes are not venomous and they're not aggressive, and copperheads are. So to me, the restoration of balance is the most important. Well, we have a world out of balance, which means a world out of balance is going to lead to a lot of disease, and that's going to lead to a lot of people's fears being spiked. And that's really the heart of why Schellie and I are here. We're here to help people transition through this while anchoring their peace. So let me bring the idea that, let's assume you're a little weird about the bugs and you wouldn't have considered this, but this is an option and this can happen. I am in my garden a couple of mornings ago, and I am cleaning up all of the dead clippings from some fallen grape leaves off my grapevines, and also my raspberries that grow underneath. And I've got a hose in one hand that is actively shooting out water because I've been hand watering. I'm always multitasking. I have got a clipping tool in my hand, and I'm also holding on to all of these clippings, and I'm going around my gate to go put it into my compost pile. You guys have all seen the picture painted. You can envision this. My hands are very full, and I'm very focused on what I'm doing. And as I go to throw these clippings into the compost pile, I see something jump out of what I'm holding, out of the debris that I'm holding, and it jumps onto my hand. And my natural reaction, because I am mammalian, because I am human in a world where things that land on you could sting you, they could bite you. We all have a nervous system that responds until our consciousness is at a perfect state of peace all the time and in a state of calm, which I was not. I'm actively grooming my yard. We could have a knee-jerk response that's protective, self-protective, just like Schellie just mentioned. We have the right to protect ourselves and set some boundaries. Well, that natural knee-jerk response led me to smacked the hose over onto my hand. I didn't hit my hand with the hose, but the spray sprayed whatever was on my hand, and in a blink of an eye, I see what looks like this spiraling praying mantis spinning off my hand and landing down on the ground right to the right of the compost pile. And I went, oh, this was one of those lesson mornings. This is okay. So I put the hose down, start soaking a plant, and I start to apologize to it. And there's so many colors on the ground, I can't tell what I'm looking at. And it hasn't moved for me to be able to see that it's visible. And I knew I only hit it with water, but it was pretty powerful. And it's a delicate little creature. And I sat there apologizing to the ground. And I'm sure to anyone that's not part of this work, you know, any of my neighbors jogging by in a brisk fashion, stepping on everything on their path, I probably look like a lunatic talking to a dirt pile on the ground. But within a few seconds, this little praying mantis started to climb up my compost pile so that I could see it. And all the while I'm apologizing for being unaware of its delicate nature, of its diminutive size, and that my natural inclination is still so animal and primal rather than more evolved and calm. Yep, me too, guys, me too. So I leaned down and I put my finger out and it climbs on. And I just sat there and I apologized and I thanked it for trusting me. And it really gave me a good looking down. Then with its delicate little hands and its little ferny fingers, it started to wipe the little bubbles of water off its face and shake them off. And it looking at me like, do you realize what you just did to me? You're going to drown me. And
no, anthropomorphizing the praying mantis here was okay.
I felt genuine personality and truly reciprocal communication with this praying mantis. And I believe we can do this with all of sentience. This is part of the earth anchor work. So you got to trust me, guys. Don't knock it till you tried it.
No.
Don't know until you've had a conversation with one of Schellie's horses or with a praying mantis in your yard. Don't nix it because you haven't done it. It's a pretty transformative experience. So it tells me, I was enjoying being in your garden and I would like to go back to your garden, but I would like you to be much more gentle with me and I need to get all the water off of me. And it proceeds to, to groom itself. And I walk over to the closest grapevine and it says, not that one, put me on the new one where all the little aphids are breaking out on the new growth. And I went, oh, you're hungry. Yes, I'm hungry. So I move all the way across the gate and around, and it literally, as I am getting to the edge of the new grapevine, it was very specific what it wanted. It's already reaching out with its legs to climb up. It went straight up to the brand new sprouts and where it was going to have a dinner. And I could go, oh no, it's going to eat the aphids. Nothing should die on this planet. Folks, the nature of everything is that things are born and they experience whatever the measure of their creation is. And then there has to be a death, a destruction, and a returning to the essence from which all new birth takes place. So I would love to be able to tell you that you're never going to harm anything. And it's just not true. And that you're never going to have to harm anything for you to set boundaries around yourself, for you to survive, for you to protect your children as they're running through the yard and there's a new underground hornet's nest, like just came up on one of my Facebook permaculture pages, and the ladies were like, what do? I don't want to poison them. I don't want to kill anything. And it was a big and beautiful discussion. But this is where you have the right to your boundaries. I can't say, and Schellie can't say, we won't say what your boundaries should be. That's personal. That has to do with how you manage your energy. But you have the right to draw boundaries to preserve yourself. And have a great relationship with the, visiting praying mantis.
Yes.
Schellie, I know you've got lots of stories on working on the property. Can you give some good examples of yours?
I don't know that I get into the, well, I'm going to tell you about a conversation I had with a vulture.
Great.
Yeah. And this was pretty significant. It was about 2 years ago. And there was a vulture who I have since named Matilda. And I'm pretty sure she's the same one that shows up. And she came and sat. So I have to tell you though, that morning, and this is another way of communication where you had a very direct conversation with the praying mantis. This was a little bit more of a conversation in the bigger field that came to me. So that morning I was writing in my journal and I was thinking about my own spiritual growth and, where I was and where I am now. And it was just before my birthday, and I often do that, you know, reflect on my personal growth throughout the year and where I am and how my beliefs have shifted or my perspectives have shifted. And I was thinking, what would I really like to work on? What would I like to develop for myself? And one of the things was I would really like to develop the ability to see auras. I'd like to be able to see auras and colors and other vibrations, you know, around people, their expanded vibrational field. That's something I'd really enjoy.
Yeah.
So that was that in the morning. I went to feed horses, and I heard the horses kind of snorting and, you know, moving around, and I went outside to see what was going on, and a large vulture had come and sat on the fence. And they were kind of standing back going, they don't usually get this close. Like, they're not usually that close. And I walked up to the fence, and she stayed right there. I say she, I don't really know, but I chose she. And she just stayed right there. I was like, I have to get my camera. So I went back into the barn, came out, she was still there. And I took a couple pictures, and then I just put the camera down, and I was like, wow, I've never been this close to a vulture. And I wasn't more than 10 feet, like just right across the fence. And so I was just able to see her feathers, and that she was actually really beautiful. I always just assumed they were very ugly, but they're not. Like the colors and the feathers. And then she lifted up a wing and just held it there. And I was like, okay.
For you to examine her beauty.
And I could see all the wings. And then she lifted up another wing, and she was wide open, just like this. And then, I was just fascinated. And I thought, I just could like feel this heartbeat. And so I did the same thing. I lifted up my arms.
I'm going to do it with you. This feels great.
We just stood there, you know, like heart to heart, and I could see all her colors and all of that. And we just stood there for the longest time. I did take a picture of her with her wings out too. And I was prepared to just stand there like I could just stand there. And then somebody came down the driveway. And she flew off. And I was like, I was so overjoyed with that experience. So I got home, and this is where the communication, like I didn't get direct communication like you're chatting with the praying mantis. But I got home, so I looked up vulture totem, you know, vulture medicine, vulture. And one of the things is that the vulture portends that you, the ability to see auras and colors.
Yeah.
And I had literally just wrote that in my journal that morning.
Ding, ding.
So that was a direct communication with, you know, totally.
The universe is talking. It hears you. It's responding back.
Right. And had I been of the mindset that, you know, a vulture is scaring the horses, let me shoo it away.
Right.
I just took the time to, you know, what's up? What can I do for you? You know, do you have something you want to share with me? Like to open up the conversation.
Right.
So that was
I love that.
And I swear it's still her. Sometimes when I'm walking the land, I'm walking the property, it's 100 acres, you know, I'll go for a walk, either riding horse or not. And there'll be like one vulture that kind of flies along with me sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so I call her Gertrude.
So such an inspiring story, Schellie, because it reminds you that, number one, approach with some objectivity rather than whatever the stories that you have in your mind about vultures happen to be. I love that you see them as pacifists, because that gives them a greater chance that you're going to approach them with tolerance and with openness to their message, which I think we need to have almost invariably with just about anything. At the onset, we get to develop our own experience with things, not passed down. Like, I've been afraid of dragonflies as a younger person because I was told dragonflies will sting you. To this day, I don't know if it's true. Could one have stung someone? Maybe. But I was told not to let them do that. I was told butterflies, however, are entirely benevolent creatures, and they only land on flowers, and they're all of the light. And here's what I've learned since I've been mastering the art of being an earth anchor. Dragonflies are equally, if not occasionally, more magical than butterflies. They will land on you all the time and check you out and be very kind and very, very gentle with their energies. And butterflies have a tendency to land on the dog poop all over my yard. And I don't necessarily want them landing on me or on my granddaughter's head right after sitting in a big pile of my dog Fate's poop. They might be somewhat magical, but they're also on this earth, and they also are, they're finding sustenance in the dregs of what happens to live in this place. So we still need boundaries. I think what we're trying to help our community here of Earth Anchors know is that we need to tread lightly, not only on the fragility that is our planet, the fragility of the sentience that is an outcropping on this planet, from the microbial life up through the insect life, up through the animal and the plant kingdoms. And then how are we going to be with people around us? Do you need to set necessary boundaries? Your boundaries, not mine, your boundaries, set necessary boundaries so that you're not giving your money away to every homeless person at every intersection, so that you're not finding yourself giving all of your money away to your children to the point that they need to take care of you because you didn't make any type of preparations for you to be able to be financially viable as you get older. We would advocate that you not cannibalize yourself, allow yourself to be cannibalized, or allow yourself to become a host to parasitic energies. But to some degree or another, because of our constant exchange, whether it is the mosquitoes down in my garden, which I put boundaries around myself with and tell them I'm not participating, to truly abusive friends and partners out there in the world, I need to be in a place where I can stay in a higher resonance that can be an evolving and appreciating energy, because I am interested in an ascension principle. I'm interested in my person, my being, moving through human evolution. Therefore, I do have to be somewhat preservational and not be willing to be the host to anything that comes along that wants what I have to give, whether it can create it for itself or not.
Right. You can use discernment as to where you're going to give and where you're not going to give. The other thing I wanted to touch on around this as we wrap up is that it's not just our actions, but our thoughts that can create harm, not just to ourselves, but to others. And even our thoughts, and this will just occur to me as well, but even our thoughts of assuming that someone is less than or not worthy in those lights, or that we hate that person or that group of people or whatever, that we're actually causing harm to ourselves through that thinking. Can you expound on that a little bit? I know
oh my gosh,
we only have a few minutes, but I think that's kind of important.
It's of imminent importance, because as we become more conscious ourselves, we realize that we're actually sharing mind field, aren't we, Schellie? And so everything you think, that of course triggers a vibration that becomes an emotion, triggers an emotion, that then resets our quantum field, even if it's just a couple of rungs outside of ourselves. Everything you think is either a blessing or a curse towards its target or its subject. And I was raised in Southern California, a very vain area, for all of its perks and all of its positives. You're down there in Carlsbad. Speaking of the location, there's a lot of focus on physical beauty. There's a lot of focus on acquisition and wealth. There's a lot of focus on thinness, fitness, and perpetual youth. So it has been ingrained in my head to look at myself critically in the mirror. A lot of personal work that's been going on, but it's also been ingrained in my head to look at someone that may be walking around with an extra 50, 60, 70 pounds and immediately think something that is less than ideal about them as an automatic, as a knee-jerk. It takes a tremendous amount of discipline to notice that that thought is starting to happen and stop it in its tracks, and then reframe and send literally a God bless to that person. And you're right. Everything we think, if it is truly a vibrational sequence of blessings and curses, is not only doing us harm to reinforce that negativity when those thoughts are negative, but it also sends it out to that person or to that circumstance or to that society. And it compounds the very thing that they're struggling with, that they need support in. Right, Schellie?
Right. In the basic tenet that everything is either an expression of love or a cry for love. even the most heinous act is a cry for love, which is, it can be so hard to not feel, repulsed or terrified, to feel the fear yourself. But what you just described was that the judgment was in us, because if we're all one and we see something that we feel is not okay, then it's a self-judgment. And so that's our own cry for love. What you just described there, though, was to be able to stop that and go, no, it's the way it is, and that's okay, and I can love myself, I can love them as is.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a fleeting moment, and then the thoughts come back again, and you have to stop it again. It's not like we don't have to continually monitor.
We do, until
we're bombarded with images and messages of this, and then we're like, and we see it, and then we have to go, wait a minute, did I just absorb that? Did I just give that permission to be my belief system because it was just flashed at me 150 times today?
Right.
It takes a lot of effort to stay conscious of that, how things are affecting us and our perceptions.
Unquestionably. So we were programmed, obviously we had the DNA inference that we took on coming into these bodies. Our souls may have come in very pure, but we got the DNA inference from our parents, and then we got the conditioning of growing up in their environment with their biases and their prejudices and their religious beliefs and dogma, and then society introduced it as a large. I am quite sure that any body phobias that I may have taken on growing up in Southern California were conditioned to my soul, not a natural part of my soul's inner perception. And then how I felt about myself got projected out to those around me. So it really comes back to the very beginning, this whole Earth Anchor work, this whole community work. Are you doing the integration work within yourself? Are you doing the release work within yourself? Are you recognizing that the empathy that you're feeling, which is to feel others, and feel it intuitively, because it's not always conveyed, is a natural state that should be developed. And with that, there is going to need to be natural boundaries, because our goal is to do no harm. Our goal is to not harm people unconsciously, harm any level of sentience unconsciously. So do we preserve? Yes. Schellie and I are in agreement on that, aren't we, Schellie? We're in agreement that some boundary needs to be found, but that it's a unique decision.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Gorgeous.
So I know we need to wrap up. I'm very excited about bringing this to people who are interested in coming in person and working with the earth and the land and the horses, and actually getting to experience themselves in this space.
Yes.
It's
with others of like mind that are reinforcing it for them. It's a feel.
Yes, and it's safe, and it's a practice.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to practice. So I'm very excited about that. Okay.
Me too. Me too. So we want to remind everybody, please go and comment, subscribe, like, get notified by ringing the bell.
Share.
Please share. Share on your permaculture circles. Share on your Earthwalker clan groups. Share on all of those that are cropping up everywhere of people that are getting into this expansive work. And consider taking a look at Schellie's and my websites, which will be linked in the YouTube description box, so that you can see some of the events that we're doing, so you can get that community up close in person and hugely supportive experience. And we're going to be talking about something that came up today, next week, and it is renewal cycles. Remember how I talked about the Kali Yuga, that things go through a birth and they go through its own hero's journey of becoming and fulfilling the measure of its creation, and the necessity of the destruction cycle that does not include fear as a practical understanding of it, but rather the awe of the experience and our participation. So we're going to be talking about that next week. You guys rock. Schellie, thank you for being so fun to be having these conversations.
Oh, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So.
I'm loving it too. And thanks for keeping me grounded, sister. To all of you, you are the solution. You are going to make all the difference in the world. Thank you for joining us. You're keeping it fun for all of us and keeping it real. Until next week. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.